Welcome to the FIU Honors podcast, Panthers Unleashed. I am your host, Emilee Garcia, and we will dive into the stories, passions, and adventures of the FIU Honors community. Let's get into today's episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Panthers Unleashed. Today, I'm here with
Emanuel Arias.
Emanuel is a honors alumni, the youngest we've had on the podcast so far. So we're going to be diving into things about his life. He is was a pre-med student here at the Honors College, and now he's in medical school. So also the first of our guests to be on that career track. So we're going to get into a lot of interesting details today. But first, Emmanuel, just give us a little background about yourself and anything you want us to know, and then we'll get into it.
Sure. So I started FIU in 2018. I graduated high school, started the Honors College here, and then I graduated in 2021 with a bachelor's in biology. And from the start, I knew I wanted to do medicine. So I decided to take the bio track just because I knew that was going to cover most of my requirements for med school and that kind of thing. And so during my time here, I did that. I did research. I did a lot of alumni stuff once I graduated and started doctor in the making during that time too. So and then I graduated and now I'm in med school.
Yes. Okay. I hit the thing. I'm so sorry. Doctor in the making. That's how I found you, because you had a big following and saw you were an honors alumni. And I thought it was really cool because I've never seen a pre-med or medical school student like market themselves in a way. And that's kind of like what I wanted to do, but with law. So I wanted to go into that career path, but also find a way to keep marketing in that career path. And you did that with medical school. So if you want to tell them a little bit about Doctor in the Making, maybe give yourself a shout out. Yeah,
for sure. So I'm mostly active on Instagram and LinkedIn. But the Instagram is Doctor in the Making, which is just DR and then in the making, or DR dot in the making. Mm-hmm. And it's basically just a platform for, pre-meds, or maybe even just people that are interested in medicine and just like to learn about health and science and that kind of stuff. And the whole purpose why I started it was because I noticed when I was here, obviously I would say the Honors College, I forgot, I'm blanking. The people that like kind of help you, tell you what classes you should take and stuff. Mm-hmm. What do you call those? The advisors, yeah. So the Honors College advisors, from my experience, were phenomenal. They were really good. They knew their stuff. And but when I went to the other ones that were outside the Honors College, mm-hmm. they were good, but I just felt like the Honors College ones were just more better, prepared. More prepared. And I didn't like that discrepancy because I knew a lot of classmates that weren't in the Honors College just because for whatever reason they just didn't want to, or they just weren't. And so I wanted to kind of have a easy place where students can just go and find all the information they need, because I felt like it was really hard to do that. And there wasn't a lot out there. And I felt like a lot of people just didn't know what to do, because there's so much that's required of you to go into medical school. And they like to say that it's a holistic approach, which at some schools is. But I think for the most part, at the end of the day, you're going to medical school. So you have to prove to them that you can perform. And so there's a lot of different things that are expected of you. And I think a lot of students just don't know what to do to stand out. And so I started Doctor in the Making with that intent, was to just have a platform where I could share my experience, where I could share other doctors' experiences, or even with the Honors College Dean, and just let people know these are the resources that are out there for you guys. This is what I recommend. This is my experience. Mm-hmm. And just allow an easy space for students to, learn, but also help them get to where they want to be.
Right. No, that's amazing. I am not a medical student. Don't intend to ever be one. But I do know, me, numbers, science, math, we don't go together. But I do know in the Honors College, especially now, we have so many pre-med students. I swear, I used to be the social media assistant. I still am, technically. But before the podcast, that was mainly what I did, was work on the presentations for graduation. And almost every single one was natural sciences, biology, or both. So I know that right now, that's why we have so many pre-med tracks and then resources to help the students get there. Maybe when you were here, it wasn't like as intense.
Yeah.
But now we have that, and I feel like exactly what you're saying is correct. I think the Honors College just knows people who want to go into like those really big career paths, like law, medicine, science, all those things, research. That's how we built our resource network, I guess is what I'm trying to say. FIU, they have such a big, like, more majors to incorporate, but the Honors College doesn't. So to do that, to find that merge, is kind of how we started this podcast too, which is why we wanted you to be on it, because...
Thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it is honors related, but, you know, FIU students who are not in the Honors College are always open to listen to it too. Find out a little bit more about the Honors College along the way and see if they want to join it, because you can always join the Honors College even if you're already an FIU student. But I love that. I would love to do that for law.
You could do it for sure. And, like, the times that I've spoken to Dean Espinosa before, I know it's very heavy in his heart is law, pre-med.
Yeah.
Because they're just the most popular. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, I can't speak for law because I'm not familiar with the figures, but I know for medicine and nursing, I mean, there's huge need. Like, we really, really need physicians, and we really need nurses. And, I mean, unless we're educating people and kind of, you know, introducing them to the field and doing that kind of stuff, then, you know,
everyone kind of gets stuck.
Yeah, and I honestly don't know what's going to happen in the future, you know, when you think about all these disparities, because especially with, you know, rural America, like, that's something that I'm passionate about. It's like public health and, you know, making sure that people can find care when they need it. And rural America is really tough to do that because there's not enough physicians. Mm-hmm. You know, the reality is not a lot of people want to go out to rural America and do medicine. And it's hard to even make a living as a physician in rural America. So stuff like that, I think, is important. And I think FIU and the Honors College has always been good in making sure that they have, like, a very open-minded approach. Mm-hmm. And so I love that about the Honors College. And it was one of the reasons why I was excited to do this podcast was because I know that it's an opportunity to share with people, FIU students or not, about what the Honors College has to offer. And all the great things that can come from it, whether it's law, pre-med, whatever it is. But yeah, I would encourage you to go to med school, go to nursing school, because we need you guys.
Okay, well, speaking of med school, your application process, because I know, like, on the law side, the LSAT and GPA is very important. So right. I know you guys take the MCAT.
Yeah.
Is it kind of like the same idea that the MCAT GPA is the highest that they look at, and then they look at everything else?
Yeah. So that was actually a pretty big thing for me when I was applying, was you always heard, like, a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. Some people be like, oh man, like, if your MCAT and GPA isn't, like, I don't know, 90th percentile, then, you know, you're going to have a hard time getting in. And then you had the other extreme where some people would be like, you know, it's not that big of a deal as long as you do decent. Make sure you focus on your extracurriculars. And I would kind of take, like, the middle stance where both are important, but if your MCAT isn't strong or your GPA isn't strong, it's not the end of the world. Mm-hmm. And if it's the other way around, maybe you did really well in the MCAT in college, but your extracurriculars are not that good, then I don't think it's the end of the world either. I think it's dependent on where do you see yourself going to medical school, because you're going to be there for 4 years, and you have to make sure that the school you're going to matches your values.
Right.
And so that's something that I did. I looked into schools where I could see myself living there for 4 years. I looked into schools where I felt I could, like, fit in, like, my values and, you know, how I viewed the world. And so once you do that, then focusing on schools that, you know, based on your grades and your scores, that you feel you have a decent opportunity in getting in. Because, you know, they're looking at all of you as a person.
Right. Because
as a physician, you have to be smart, but at the same time, you have to be able to hold a conversation. You have to be able to communicate with people. You have to be able to problem solve. You have to, it's more than just being good at school. Mm-hmm. So they do look at everything, but making sure that you look at a school that, you know, okay, you know, like, for example, I don't know what the MCAT score for Harvard is, but I'm assuming it's like 90 something percentile. If you didn't score 90 something percentile and you're in 50 percentile, maybe don't apply to Harvard, but, apply to, wherever else, like schools that have students that have that average. Mm-hmm. And that's okay, once you're in, I guess the hard part is over. I mean, not to say med school is not hard, but I think it's just like a very stressful time is applying.
The anxiety of it all.
And it's just, it's a lot.
I'm taking you back.
Yeah, but I mean, it's good. I think something like motivating for students, because I feel like you don't hear it a lot what you see online, or like students that are doing, super good on their scores and stuff.
Yeah. And
like in my own case, I didn't do that well in the MCAT. I had to take it 3 times. And even then I did just about average. But my GPA was good. So it kind of changes every year because it's based on like a standardized curve, like standard deviation and stuff. But usually the average is about 500. And then the score goes, I think the lowest is like 482. And then I think the highest is like 524. Sorry, I don't remember these numbers anymore.
Really? That's so...
Yeah,
it's such an odd pair of numbers.
Yeah, it's kind of random. But it's a difficult exam. It's 8 hours long, tons of different subjects.
It's 8 hours long?
Yeah. So you get little breaks in between. I think they're like 15 minutes.
You do all 8 hours like straight, like on the same day?
Yeah. So you'd go in really early morning, I don't know, 8 a.m. or something. And then you start the exam. And then you get a break after each section. I think each section is like an hour and a half, maybe. Give or take. I mean, I haven't taken this exam. It's been a while since I took this exam, so I don't remember exactly. But it's an 8 hour day, including your breaks and that kind of thing.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I did not know that part.
Yeah. So it covers a lot of things. Biochem, physics, biology, organic chemistry, general chemistry. It's basically all of your undergrad in one giant exam.
But it's like things that you use in medical school.
I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't say 100%, but I think my personal opinion is just that the exam is more so to see if you could handle the workload of medicine, because studying for the MCAT is very intense. Like you're studying. I mean, it kind of depends who you are. Like, if you're a really good test taker, I know people that studied like 3 months, did really well. But I think most people probably studied like 6 months. But that period of time that you're studying is, I think, pretty analogous to like what you'd be studying in medical school during a semester. Because you're just really studying like all the time. So I think they do it more so for that. Not to say that it's completely irrelevant information. It's just in medical school, they focus more on like pathology and more like medicine, like that kind of stuff. And if they do go into like organic chemistry or biology, it's kind of like a very basic level. So when you get there, you've seen the information before.
Yeah. You're not like glueless.
Yeah. And you just kind of remember it. But I wouldn't say it's like you need it. Like
you could, the end all be all.
Yeah. Like you could major in psychology and be fine in med school.
I've actually heard that now graduate schools, so like pretty much all of them, are not necessarily looking for people who are biology majors or chemistry majors to go to medical school, but I don't know, like Spanish majors or communications, like different areas of university, so that there's more diverse, I don't know, intellect.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, does it really matter what you major in to go to medical school, or it's just basically off like your extracurriculars, your GPA, MCAT, all that stuff?
In terms of like on paper, just requirements, it doesn't matter as long as you just take the classes that you need to take.
Right.
But there's definitely benefit. Like if you major in biology or if you major in physiology, when you get to med school, assuming you remember what you learned and like you did well in your classes, then there's definitely a huge benefit because you've seen this stuff before, and especially physiology. I think I met a lot of people in medical school that had degrees in physiology, and I mean they did really well in everything, just because physiology, you have to understand everything and how everything works. Yeah. And so when they got there, they're like, oh man, like, you know, I know this stuff, you know. You're never going to know everything because med school is very different than undergrad. Undergrad, you know, they kind of show you everything, but it's you don't go as deep as in med school because you're in med school, you know, you're learning more in-depth things, how the body works. But it's definitely a huge help. But if you're not passionate about biology or physiology and stuff, but you like medicine, then you don't have to major in those things. You can major in anything that interests you, and it may even benefit you because, you know, you'll get better grades because you like what you're learning.
Exactly. And also, just for those who don't know, if you are interested in going to medical school and you are biology or physiology major, any in the sciences, and you have other interests, you can always do a certificate. I'm sure like they look at that too. Yeah.
So it is a requirement to have a bachelor's and to take your MCAT. Mm-hmm. But, you know, anything like that, like certificates or even just like work experience, they really like to see that, like, you're not just a really good student. Like, they want to see, like, I remember in my interviews, not once did they mention my MCAT. Not once did they talk about my GPA. All my interviews were all focused on, like, who I was, what I liked to do. And I think a couple asked me about, like, my research and, like, what I did. But, like, most of the conversation was just getting to know you as a person. Because, again, you know, once they go through all the applications, I feel like at first they're just kind of looking, okay, can this person handle the workload of medical school? Mm-hmm. And the way they do that is MCAT, GPA. And then once they get past that and they know, okay, this guy or this girl, you know, has what it takes, let's get to know them as a person. And so that's really what the interview is. It's just getting to know you as a person, see if you're a good fit for the school. And it's an opportunity for you, too, to see if you're a good fit for the school.
Every school does an interview?
Yeah.
Or some schools just...
Every school does an interview. So you have to apply. It depends if you do MD, DO. Mm-hmm. And we could talk about the difference.
Yeah, what is that?
So, okay, so MD is what is referred to as allopathic medicine. Which is what you would think of typically as like your normal MD doctor.
Okay.
So a DO is an osteopathic doctor. So both MDs and DOs do exactly the same thing. They prescribe medication, they can do surgery, they can be a doctor and do doctor things. So in that sense, they're exactly the same. Training's exactly the same. The only difference is that DOs do extra training. They do additional training called osteopathic manipulative treatment. Mm-hmm. And so this is an approach of, when I explain it to people, I kind of think of like physical therapy. It's different, but I feel like that's the best way to explain it for people to understand. So you do additional training and you do a lot of training with feeling with your hands. So we'll have like separate labs and separate classes where they pair us up with like classmates and stuff, and you know, they teach us how to diagnose certain like muscular like problems or like discomforts, like lower back pain or like sciatic nerve pain. Like these nerves are all running kind of all over the place. It's like a big web of just these like nerves all over your body, and a lot of times they're running through muscles and this kind of thing. So there's certain things you could do that could relieve pain or heal pain that you could do with your hands.
Like chiropractor?
So chiropractors are kind of just cracking stuff, like kind of like when you crack your knuckles. Mm-hmm. So that sound you hear is just like basically air like between your joints just popping. So that's different. The idea behind it is the same, in that chiropractors are trying to basically heal your body through doing cracking certain things. But this is more, I think, like fundamental in like anatomy and like understanding how the body works. So like, you know, certain muscles, like you have to know your anatomy really well, because you got to know like what muscles are where the nerve is running, so that you could treat the patient. So that's really the only difference. DOs have this additional thing, and their focus is more holistic. So when they're treating the patient, they're not just treating your symptoms, but we're taught to treat you as a person. Right. So how are you doing mentally? How are you doing physically? You know, what can you do to, like, if you come in with high blood pressure, I could prescribe you a medication, but we can also talk about, like, what's going on at home. You know what I mean? Yeah. Why do you have high blood pressure? Like, you know, are you depressed? Is that maybe why you're not going to the gym as much? Or is something going on? Like, you know, can we motivate you? Can, you know, like, it's more of like a holistic approach, which I'm a huge fan of.
Is this what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was like, how do you know so much?
Yeah. So I'm a proud DO student. But nothing wrong absolutely with an MD. I mean, MDs are interest. Yeah, it's just personal interest.
Wow. Okay, wait, well, where do you go to medical school?
I go to LMU, Lincoln Memorial University.
Oh, okay. I've heard of this school because I was looking at it for law school. In Tennessee.
Yeah. Okay. I go to their Knoxville campus.
Okay. So how did you transition? Have you lived in Miami your whole life besides moving to Tennessee?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So how did you transition from going from Miami to Tennessee?
Huge transition, for sure.
I feel like the culture shock is a little bit different.
Super different. I'm Hispanic. Here, you don't feel like a minority. In Miami, right, I feel like Hispanic. Everybody's Hispanic. I feel like once you leave Dade County, then you start to feel a little bit. But definitely once you leave the state, I mean, it's so different. But I like it a lot. I mean, I looked at schools in Tennessee because I knew I wouldn't mind living there. Mm-hmm. And so I like Knoxville a lot. It's, compared to Miami, a pretty small town. Everyone's super nice. And yeah, I mean, it's my vibe. I've always liked the outdoors. Yeah. So there's a lot of that. I love hiking. Yeah, I take my dog hiking all the time.
So you have a lot of hiking spots near you?
Yeah, there's tons of parks and hiking and, like, I mean, I don't have a lot of free time, so
right.
When I do have free time, I definitely spend it outside. Yeah.
I thought about going to Tennessee. I've never visited it, but I've always wanted to. I did like the Camino in Spain. Yeah. And that was like my first real hiking, if you want to call it, experience. And don't get me wrong, like, I felt like I was gonna not come back. I was like, okay, this is it. This is where it ends. Because there was literally one point that I was going up this one mountain and I almost started crying. Wow. I was like, I can't do it. It's like, I'm not going to make it to the top.
Yeah, there's really intense ones for sure.
And I was just like, I had to stop. Yeah. I looked out and I was like, am I really going to make it, or do I just stop here and call the bus to come pick me up? But I wanted the certificate at the end. So I was like, no, I have to do it.
Yeah, I own the prize. Yeah,
and my friend's all the way to the top. She's just looking at me, just waiting for me. And I'm like, all right, if she made it, I can make it.
Good motivator.
Yeah. But have you visited any other towns in Tennessee, or you would just stay in Knoxville after medical school?
I've gone to Nashville, and it's nice. But really during the semester, I'm in Knoxville.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just studying. Yeah, pretty much. I either study at home or a coffee shop or on campus. But yeah, med school is.
I've heard it's a lot of tough. Like trauma bonds.
Oh yeah, for sure. 1,000%. And it's kind of funny because going in, like, I knew it was going to be hard, but I feel like I didn't really understand. Like, it's a different type of hard. Mm-hmm. Like, the material itself is not necessarily the hardest thing in the world. It's just the volume of information coming at you is insane. Like, you cannot afford to procrastinate. Like, you will fail. There is no way you could play catch up.
How many classes do you guys take in, like, a semester? Is it like undergrad that you have?
We have credits. Okay. But you don't pick your classes or anything. They tell you, like, this is what you're going to take. And they kind of make a schedule for you. So our first semester, we took 21 credits. And
which is 7 classes? Or each class has, like, a different amount of credits?
So each class has a different amount of credits. Okay. I mean, I could sit here and try to think, but...
No, don't worry about that.
I don't know how many they were. But it's quite a bit. Your first 2 years of med school are what they call, like, your, like, didactic years, where you just focus on classroom. Right. And then your last 2 years, you get into the hospital and you do rotations and you kind of see patients and that kind of thing. But you're just busy with school all the time because you really only have 2 years to learn everything that you need to know before they send you out there.
And then you just start practicing.
Yeah. So you're still in school, right? Like, the school has partnerships with hospitals in the area and stuff. And so it's kind of like a shadowing experience, but you're a med student, so they let you do more.
And do you get graded for that?
You do get graded. Okay. But it's not like your professor grading you. It's like the physician you're with in that rotation, they'll grade you. And then after each rotation, you'll take like an exam to make sure you learned and like applied your knowledge and stuff. And the idea is just to expose you to all these specialties so that you have an idea of what you want to do once you graduate.
Do you have your idea already?
Yeah, I have a couple ideas. I really like cardiology.
The heart?
Yeah.
Okay.
I really like cardiology. And general surgery, I've always liked just because that's what I shadowed in undergrad. I did it for years, and I just thought it was so cool. But yeah, I'm between those two. We'll see what happens.
General is like the...
General does... So...
I'm thinking like Grey's Anatomy. That's how far my medical knowledge goes, okay?
Good show, but not
realistic, I know.
Not realistic. So, general surgery, so once you graduate medical school, you have to do what's called a residency.
Right.
And then at that point, you start getting paid, but you're not getting paid full salary because you're not on your own 100% yet. Mm-hmm. You're still in training, but like in your specialty. And at this point, you're a physician, so they kind of like let you do more. It's kind of like a gradual thing. Like they stick you out there and you're like, okay, go. And then as time goes by, they give you like more string until you're like last year, and then you're doing everything. Yeah. And then you're done. So general surgery residency, you're doing everything. So you have blocks where you're doing, it depends on the program, but like you'll do heart surgery for a couple months, then you'll do transplant, then you'll do abdominal. And like you'll just kind of go through like breast, like everything. And you're really just like a generalist. And so once you're done, depending on like the contract you sign with a hospital, you could choose to focus in a certain area just because you were trained in everything. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, general surgery physicians tend to do abdominal stuff because hospitals have cardiovascular surgeons. Right. And they have transplant surgeons.
That's kind of why I said the Grey's Anatomy thing. Yeah. You know, you got your Preston Burris, Christina Yang, and you got your Meredith Grays and Baileys.
Yeah, medicine has become very specialized. So general surgery tends to do a lot of like abdominal stuff. But I still think it's super cool. I mean, I also like the flexibility where like you're kind of just doing everything. I like that.
You're not just working on one thing.
Yeah.
Like cardiology is just, you're only working with the heart.
Yeah.
And the lungs?
Well, no, but there are subspecialties within cardiology where you could focus on more specific things. Like cardiology, like just general, is actually pretty general because, you know, the heart is working with a lot of different organs of the body to kind of function. And so a lot of times you'll be working along with nephrologists, which are like kidney doctors, or maybe pulmonologists, which are lung doctors. And so you're you're specialized in the heart, but you're kind of like a generalist in a way because although your focus is the heart, you're kind of concerned about a bunch of other things too. But within cardiology, there are subspecialties that you could do, like electrophysiology, which is all you're doing is the like electrical stuff of the heart. So the heart is just like a regular muscle, like anything else. And so your body, in order to contract muscles, kind of sends out like electrical impulses, which we call like, yeah, exactly. So they just focus on that. That's like what an arrhythmia is, for example. So like if your heartbeat is irregular, we call that an arrhythmia. And that's really just because you're like when your brain's sending that signal, like that electrical impulse in the heart muscle, something's wrong where like the timing is wrong. And so you'll have like irregular heartbeats. And so that could, you know, be problematic because the blood's not flowing properly. Yeah. Because, you know, you have 4 chambers. And so one chamber's contracting, the other one's not. And like it could cause a mess. And so if you're an electrophysiologist, you would focus on that, just that. Or you have structural cardiology where you're just focusing on heart valves. And so if you have heart valve disease for some reason, one of the valves of the heart are not working, that's what you focus on. So there's tons of different things you could do. This
is actually very informative. Like I'm learning so much right now, guys. The only way I'm keeping up with this conversation is like little terminologies that I've heard on Grey's Anatomy. Yeah. But I didn't even understand biology when I was in it. I gotta be. It's like the only thing I ever got.
Bio's hard though. Not gonna lie. I had a hard time in bio,
and I did it for a summer term. So imagine.
Yeah, that's tough.
I did it in 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's tough. I took a couple of summer classes here, and those are intense.
I was like, no, this is not for me. I'm glad I went the route that I went.
Yeah.
But you're in your final year of medical school, or your third?
No, I'm in my first semester. I just started.
What?
Yeah. So, applying to medical school, I think...
Why did I think you were already...
I think this was your question earlier, and then I kind of got sidetracked about the MDDO thing.
That's fine. This always happens. Every episode, we get into something like this.
Hey, that keeps people on their feet, right? Mm-hmm. But, so when you apply to medical school, I think it's unnecessarily a long process. I think it could be better streamlined, but that's how how it works. So basically what you do is the cycle opens depending if you're an MD applicant or a DO applicant. Mm-hmm. They're like a couple months difference, but they open around summertime. And so once the cycle opens, you submit an application. So the application has a lot of different things, like personal information. We're just putting like your name, address, that email, stuff, all that kind of stuff. And then you'd submit your transcripts, and then the important stuff, your MCAT, and then your personal statement. So your personal statement is basically like an essay.
Why medical school?
Yeah, why medicine. And so you'd submit that, and that's what they call the primary application. Once you submit that, then schools will get back to you and ask for a secondary application. So secondary applications are different depending on the school. They'll ask you different things, but they're more specific questions, like based on the school, just to kind of get an idea of like
why this school?
Yeah, why this school? Mm-hmm. And like, are you applying here just because you want to apply to as many places as possible, or do you actually want to come here?
Does it ask you, are you applying to other medical schools?
I don't think so. I think they kind of assume that because, I mean, the acceptance rate is pretty low for medical school.
For law schools, they ask you that. And I'm like...
Yeah, that's kind of a...
I'm not going to tell you.
Yeah, it's kind of a ridiculous question.
Why would I rat myself out?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the question's not mandatory, so I don't have to answer it.
Yeah.
But I always wondered, I was like, does medical school ask this? Because, I mean,
when I applied, they didn't. I mean, maybe it's different now, but when I applied, they didn't. But...
Good job for them.
Yeah. You'd submit secondary application, and then if they like you...
That's where the interview
comes. They'd interview. And then there's all different... I mean, there's a bunch of different types of interviews. Some interviews are like scenarios where like I remember I had one interview where they came in and they gave me a scenario like, oh, you're a resident at like some hospital, and the attending comes in, which is like the full-fledged doctor.
Yeah.
So assuming like their scenarios, the guy comes in and, you know, he seems intoxicated, he smells like alcohol, and he's going to go do a surgery, like, what do you do? And so, you know, they just want to see that you're going to do the right thing. You're going to be ethical. You're going to, you know, prioritize the patient, you know, and just do the right thing despite you maybe having pressure from higher ups or other stuff to not do it. So, but the interview process for the most part, like I said, they're just trying to get to know you as a person.
Yeah. They ask you mainly like personal questions?
Yeah.
Like, why did you do this research?
Yeah, like, why'd you do the research? I remember I had, at the time, I was like a Heat fan. I'm still a Heat fan, but at the time I had like a Heat poster behind me. And I guess I was like, it was in the view of the camera, and they just asked me about it. They're like, oh, like, you know, you like you basketball fan or whatever. And we just started talking about that. So it's obviously up to the discretion of whoever's interviewing you, but they just really just want to know, like, are you a fun person? You know, like, what do you do for fun? Can you get along with people? Yeah, can you get along with people? Like, how do you de-stress? You know, like, because it's going to be stressful. You know, you can't study all the time. You need to take breaks.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people overlook the fact that, yes, you have to be, you know, have the brain power to do your profession. But a lot of it is, how can you react to people?
Yeah.
How do you talk to people? What people do you know?
Yeah.
Which is why I necessarily don't think that you maybe have to work in a doctor's office to like have experience to go to medical school. But like, for example, me, I work in a restaurant.
Yeah.
I meet doctors, lawyers, judges, I don't know, other important people.
Yeah, yeah.
on the daily.
Yeah.
I talk to them. Even people from Germany, from Europe, from wherever. Because the restaurant I work at is kind of like, it shows up on the touristy spots, I think. And that's how kind of like I learned how to talk to people. I've always known how to talk to people, but in a professional matter and just getting along with them on a one-on-one level, and I've never even seen them before or have nothing in common with them but the fact that they're eating the food that I'm selling to them. That has really helped me do this, to be honest. Like, we just met.
Yeah.
Every person that comes in, I meet them that day.
Yeah.
Unless it was like I had my friend Diana, she came and did an episode with me. Obviously, I've known her for a little while. I think that was the only exception. But everyone else has been, I message them on Instagram or LinkedIn. They come in, we meet that first time, and go from there. Which is a really big skill. So that's why on my law school application, I put host of a podcast.
Yeah, that's a huge thing.
Because they can always look it back, and they can see I'm not lying.
Yeah.
I actually do host a podcast.
And they actually prefer stuff like that. Like, they want to see that you're not...
It's not typical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want necessarily always like cookie cutter applicant. Mm-hmm. Like stuff like that, like working at a restaurant, that kind of thing. Like that says a lot about you because it says that you can form relationships. Mm-hmm. You can manage a lot of things at once. Because I mean, when you're doing a bunch of tables, like you're all over the place, you got to make sure you're remembering things. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's actually kind of analogous to like being a physician where like you have 20 patients to see. You got to remember which room has what medication, who's complaining about what. You have to make sure you got all your orders and like, so they really like that kind of stuff. And I think people overlook it all the time.
It's not necessarily about being, like you said, copy paste.
Yeah.
You got to show your difference, where you shine. I mean, like if I was doing an interview for medical school and somebody said, why have you been working at a restaurant this whole time? That would be my answer.
Right.
I would do exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
Like, it's exactly the same thing. If I obviously was into medicine like that, I knew that realm. That's what I would have said. But it's like, it just goes to show that everybody's unique in a certain way. And whether you're applying to medical school or, I don't know, master's degree, PhD, law school, any graduate school, your personal experiences can set you apart in a way that you never would have thought. And then the admissions committee, like, I feel like they have just done this so many times that they're like, oh, okay, this person's biology, they were probably in, I don't know, what's a popular medical extracurricular?
Probably like a medical scribe or like EMS or something. I mean, in my interview, one of my interviews, it was me and I think it was like 3 other people. And it was just kind of like a group style interview.
Oh.
And it was kind of scary because like, I was like, wow, every single person like that's interviewing me right now has like essentially the same application that I have. Like, it's me. It's just copy paste.
You're like, what makes me special?
and that's like kind of scary because then you want to stand out in the interview. And I feel like most pre-meds kind of know that, but like, I don't know, just like seeing it like so real like that, like live real time, like it was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to do stuff like that. Like, do things that you actually enjoy to do because that's what makes you unique. Mm-hmm. And that's what they want to see. They want to see that like you have interest too. It's not just all medicine. It's not just all school. There's more to life to that.
Yeah. Did you start Doctor in the Making when you got to medical school or before?
No, I started it before. I started it in undergrad. I think I was like a sophomore. Back then it was a little bit different. Back then I focused a lot on doing like long form videos I've done some with Dina Espinosa. I did some with Dr. Medike. I did some with mostly physicians because it was kind of like the focus.
Yeah.
But back then it was more so making videos and educating the public on medicine, health, and pre-med stuff, which is still my focus. But now I'm not going out and like making videos with people. Yeah, now I'm just kind of doing my own thing and just posting, you know, when I have time, like things I find interesting or my personal experience with medical school and that kind of thing. But
did you talk about it in your interview?
Yeah, I did. It was part of my application for sure. They didn't bring it up in the interview, but it was on my application.
They didn't bring it up in the interview?
Not at all. They spoke about basketball. They spoke about my research, and then like I was a medical scribe as well. And that was kind of it. Like it was kind of like this, like just getting to know each other. Like it was so, very
like shook that they didn't bring it up. If I was looking at your application, I'd be like, "Ooh, what's that?" And I would talk about it.
Yeah, you would think that they'd focus on MCAT grades, like stuff, but they're really just trying to get to know you.
That is crazy. No, yeah. I just remember looking at your Instagram and I was like, "Oh, this is aesthetic," and I was like, "Oh wait, he's an FIU Honors alum." Okay, let's message him. But I would think that was part of the reason why you got into like the medical school you went to, because I don't feel like a lot of pre-med students run an Instagram that teaches people about medicine.
There's a lot of accounts out there, but I wouldn't say it's like a mainstream thing either.
But you did it while you were a student, so
yeah. I really just did it just because it was something that interested me and I felt like there was a need. Yeah. And back then I actually had a website where I had a GPA calculator. I'd have letter of recommendation templates that students can use. I mean, I had tons of stuff like just on this one website, just super like streamlined, super easy to access, because that was my goal. Like my thing was like, why is it so hard to figure out like what they expect out of me? And like, how do I ask my professor who has 200 students for a personal letter of recommendation? Like, you know what I mean? So
did you ever see any of your recommendations?
They don't let you see them.
Yeah, us too.
You have to like upload it to like some portal thing, but I mean, I'm in, so I guess they were decent. I don't know.
Yeah. Like you said, the hard part.
Yeah. That's definitely the most nerve-wracking part, is applying and all that stuff.
Well, to wrap it up, because we're almost there, what are your future plans? Like after medical school, what's your goal?
So my goal is, I don't know the specialty. Maybe general surgery, maybe cardiology. I don't know. But whatever I do, my goal is to treat patients holistically, treat them as a person, and not just their symptoms. I want to be known as a doctor that, like, it's evident that I care about not just like numbers and like, your blood work. Like, I want people to, come see me and be like, wow, this person actually cares about my well-being. And I think that's always been my goal, and that's one of the main reasons why I chose medicine, is because I wanted to treat people and like form relationships with people.
Yeah.
And not just treat their symptoms, but treat them as a whole person. And maybe they just need to be heard. That's fine, like seeing a doctor is a scary thing sometimes, and it's very frustrating when they're spitting out all this medical jargon you don't understand. Mm-hmm. And so I think we need to slow down, and we need to just let the patient be heard and repeat it if it needs to be repeated, if they didn't understand, and just make sure they feel cared for, and make sure they don't feel like just this diseased thing. Like,
so that they feel a little bit normal.
Yeah.
Because, everybody at the end of the day has something wrong with them.
Yeah.
Not everybody's picture perfect image of health. But, well, this is a lot of information. If anybody has any questions about the medical school process or anything that we talked about today in the podcast, Doctor in the Making is always available to help you with any of those questions.
For sure, reach out whenever.
Yeah. He is available on Instagram, but also you have a bunch of stuff on there already that could possibly help.
Yeah, so the website I took down because I wanted, now that I was in med school, I wanted to like update it, because once I got in, I was like, okay, now I know more than I knew back when I was in undergrad. So that's no longer up and like available for people to see, but that's just because
you're revamping.
I'm revamping. Okay. And so, it'll be available eventually, but for now it's just Instagram and LinkedIn, sharing health info, pre-med advice, and then obviously my DM is always open. Yeah. Any questions or anything like that.
He answered me very fast, so if you have any questions, he's always available to answer
as soon as I can, especially when I'm on break. So
yeah. But thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Tennessee is a long way.
Yeah, it is.
From Miami to come be in this room with us. But yeah, guys, that's going to wrap up today's episode. Remember to always follow FIU Honors on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube. What am I missing? I think we also have LinkedIn.
There you go.
We're just talking about it on LinkedIn too. We always post our episodes right after we finish them, probably a week after. So stay tuned for this one. And last but not least, pause up.